My name's Adam. I'm 28, the youngest of three siblings, and apparently the designated family disappointment. Not my words, my mother's. In fact, you've always been different, she'd say, like she was trying to be kind but couldn't quite resist twisting the knife. Different, in our house, was code for, you're not like us. And by us, she meant my older sister Meredith and my brother Eric, the golden girl and the dependable one. Meredith was everything I wasn't: polished, extroverted, ambitious in a socially acceptable way. She made partner at her law firm last year and immediately turned into a wedding Pinterest board in heels. Eric was quieter, but he was mom's rock. He got a stable job in finance, married a nice girl, and gave my parents their first grandchild before 30. Me? I went to art school. I freelance as a graphic designer. I rent a modest apartment above a coffee shop, drive a car I paid off myself, and live a life I actually like. But none of that matters to my family because I didn't do it their way. The engagement dinner for Meredith was held at this upscale restaurant with marble floors, gold-trimmed menus, and waiters who didn't write anything down but somehow never forgot your order. It was supposed to be intimate, just close family and a few friends. But knowing Meredith, it was more of a dress rehearsal for the main event. Everything had to be Instagram perfect: the lighting, the seating chart, even the color of the drinks. I got an invite the same day the florist confirmed. That's not sarcasm. The email literally said, "Hey, Adam, just a heads up. We're having the engagement dinner next Saturday. It's at Verde, 7 p.m. Dress smart." That was it. "No, we'd love to see you." "No, can you make it?" Just a directive. Like they were checking off a list. Still, I showed up. I ironed a button down, cleaned my boots, and even got a fresh haircut. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just didn't want to give them more ammunition. I parked in the lot across the street, walked in, and gave the host my name. He raised an eyebrow, then led me through a long corridor into a private dining room at the back. The lights were warm, the table was pristine, and everyone was already seated. Except for one glaring detail: the place cards. They were little folded cards with gold calligraphy, probably printed, not handwritten. Meredith said bride-to-be. Her fiancé, Ryan, said future groom. My mom and dad were mother of the bride and proud father. Even Eric had best brother. There was one card left. Mine. And when I saw it, my stomach dropped. The failure. At first, I thought it was a sick joke. A placeholder someone forgot to swap out. I stood there staring, not saying a word. And then I heard it: Snickers. Meredith's friend Tara covered her mouth with her wine glass. Ryan let out a breathy laugh and looked at Meredith like he was impressed. My mom smiled. Not sheepishly. Proudly. "Oh, come on, Adam," she said. "It's just a little joke. Don't be so sensitive." Eric didn't laugh. He just looked away, suddenly very interested in his water glass. I sat down slowly, my chest tight. Every word out of their mouths after that felt like background noise, the kind of static you hear on a TV that's lost signal. They toasted the engagement, talked about caterers and colors and venues and honeymoons. They passed around shrimp cocktails and laughed at inside jokes. No one mentioned me again, not by name. Just someone's a little quiet tonight, or guess we touched a nerve. I said nothing. Not at first. But as the wine flowed and their laughter got louder, something inside me cracked, not in an explosive way. More like a steady, clean break. I looked at them, my family, and felt like I was seeing them clearly for the first time. The polished surface, the fake affection, the backhanded compliments disguised as banter. I realized I wasn't upset because they crossed a line. I was upset because I kept letting them. When Meredith raised her glass for the third time and said, "Here's to family, who puts up with you even when you mess up your whole life trying to be an artist," I stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just picked up my glass, looked at each one of them, really looked, and said, "To family. The kind you learn to live without." The room fell silent. Even the waiter paused mid-step. I set my glass down gently and walked out. No one followed me. Not at first. As I walked across the parking lot, I pulled out my keys. Ryan's car, technically leased under my name, because his credit wasn't good enough, was parked right next to mine. I'd been the cool future brother-in-law who helped them out a few months ago. But there's a reason I kept the spare key. And there's a reason I never took my name off the registration. I unlocked it, got in, and drove off without hesitation. On the way home, I called the venue they were planning to tour the following weekend. The deposit? Paid on my card. So were the reservations for their mini engagement trip to Napa and the custom cake tasting scheduled for Tuesday. One by one, I canceled every single one. Politely, of course. I didn't yell. I just explained there had been a change of plans. By the time I got home, my phone had begun buzzing. Meredith, Ryan, Mom, Eric, over and over. I didn't answer, because for the first time in years, I finally felt in control. And then the messages started pouring in. At first, it was just a trickle. A missed call from Meredith. A text from Mom that read, "What are you doing? Don't be ridiculous." Ryan left a voicemail with that smug undertone he always used when he thought he was being reasonable. "Hey, Adam, okay, so you made your point. Can we just talk? No need to be dramatic, man." But I didn't respond. By the time I sat down on my couch, the air thick with that strange mix of adrenaline and calm, my phone was buzzing like a dying insect. 31 missed calls. 12 voicemails. Meredith's messages started changing tone, first confused, then angry, then panicked. "Adam, seriously? Where's the car? You are not doing this. You wouldn't. Adam, nap is in 3 days. Call me back. Now." Mom chimed in again with, "If you're upset, you should have said something. This is cruel and immature. You're ruining a very special time." That last part made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so them. I was ruining their special moment. Never mind the fact that they sat around a table and laughed while calling me a failure in cursive. I opened the group chat. Yes, we had a family group chat, and saw Eric had finally said something. "Okay, I don't know what's going on, but can someone explain why the reservations for Napa just got canceled?" No one replied. So I sent a single message to the group. Check whose name's on the receipts. And maybe next time, use something other than slurs disguised as humor. Enjoy figuring it out. Then I left the group chat entirely. The next morning, I got a call from the restaurant. The car had been towed from my name. I told the leasing company it was no longer in safe possession, and they were all too happy to cooperate. Funny how fast people respond when they're dealing with assets. By noon, Ryan had left a blistering series of texts. "You are insane. You will pay for this. Good luck ever being welcome at a family event again." Welcome? I wasn't sure I ever had been. And that thought haunted me more than I expected. Because the truth is, I had always wanted to be included. Even when I told myself I didn't care. Even when I rolled my eyes and stayed silent, deep down, there was always this pathetic little hope that one day they'd see me, really see me, as someone worthy of more than polite tolerance and jokes at my expense. But I realized something else that morning, sipping the cold coffee I'd forgotten to finish the night before. They didn't get to define me anymore. Meredith's world revolved around appearances. Ryan cared about control. My parents clung to the illusion that success came in one shape, one path, and I'd strayed from it. I had spent years internalizing that narrative. That because I didn't earn 6 figures or wear a suit or own a house in the suburbs, I was less than. A backup character in their perfect family sitcom. But now, I was the one with the remote. That night, Eric showed up at my place. I heard the knock, checked the peephole, and hesitated. He was alone. No mom. No Meredith. No smug fiancé lurking in the shadows. Just my brother, looking tired and carrying 2 coffees. I opened the door without a word. "Hey," he said, quietly. I didn't laugh. "I know." He handed me one of the cups. I told him it was too far. "Even before you got there." "But you didn't stop it," I said. Not accusing, just a fact. He looked down. "Yeah, I didn't. I should have. I'm sorry." We sat on the balcony, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then Eric cleared his throat. "You know, Dad said something last year. About you. We were at Thanksgiving, and he thought you couldn't hear. He said, Adam's not the kind of son you brag about at the office, but he's probably the only one who'd actually show up if you needed help moving a body." He chuckled. I think he meant it as a compliment. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just shook my head and took a sip. Eric stayed for another 20 minutes before leaving. He didn't press me to forgive anyone. Didn't try to explain it all away. He just said, "Call me if you ever want to talk." Or not. Either way, I get it. The next few days were oddly peaceful. The silence was louder than the noise used to be, but in a good way. Like taking off headphones after hours of static. I deleted the voicemails. Blocked Ryan. Muted Mom and Meredith. I didn't do it out of anger, but out of necessity. Out of self-preservation. But I knew something else was coming. Because I still hadn't heard the worst of it. And when the wedding planner called, completely confused, because half the vendors had backed out, I knew the next storm was about to hit. And I had a front row seat. The call from the wedding planner came 2 days later. I almost didn't answer. I didn't recognize the number, and I'd gotten in the habit of letting unknown calls go to voicemail. But something told me to pick up this one. Hi, is this Adam Weston? Yes. This is Vanessa Colburn, Meredith's wedding coordinator. I, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's been some confusion I was hoping you could help clear up. I didn't say anything at first. Just waited. Well, she continued, her tone now carefully professional. Several vendors have informed us that reservations and contracts under your name were canceled, including the Napa trip, the cake tasting, and the transportation service for the bridal party. Meredith insisted everything was covered and that you were just the guarantor for the payments. But the more we look into it, your name is on nearly every primary account. That's correct, I said simply. There was a pause. I could hear her flipping through paperwork in the background. So you did cancel them? Yes. Another pause. This one longer. I see, she said finally. I suppose I don't need to ask why. No, I said. You don't. She exhaled. Well, thank you for confirming. I appreciate the clarity, though I expect I'll be hearing from Meredith shortly. I'm sure you will. I hung up, and not 5 minutes later, the storm hit. Meredith called. Not just once. Over and over. I didn't pick up. She sent voice messages that started panicked and quickly morphed into rage. She accused me of sabotage, of jealousy, of ruining the most important day of her life. There were screenshots of unpaid deposits, cancellation notices, and then finally pictures of the place cards from the dinner. One in particular. The failure. With a caption, "You're overreacting." It was supposed to be funny. Get over yourself. It took everything in me not to respond. Not because I was tempted to argue, but because I realized I had nothing left to say. That place card summed it all up. Not just the name, but the laugh. The approval from everyone around the table. The shrug from Mom. The silence from Eric. I deleted the message. The next day, I went to the leasing office and formally ended the car agreement. Since I was still the primary signer, the dealership repossessed it with no legal issues. Apparently, Ryan had already gotten a warning notice because he'd been dodging calls for a week. I left the dealership, walked to my car, and sat there for a while, staring out the windshield. It was strange. There was no satisfaction. No gotcha moment. Just a calm, sobering clarity. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. I wanted peace. But Meredith wasn't going to let it in that easily. Later that week, I got a call from my aunt, Dad's sister. She's the closest thing I have to a sane family member. She never picked sides, never made passive-aggressive comments. Just existed quietly on the sidelines, offering polite support and sending thoughtful Christmas cards. Adam, she said, I just got off the phone with your mom. Here it comes, I thought. She says you've gone off the deep end, that you're trying to punish Meredith, that you've embarrassed the whole family. I didn't say anything, just waited. But I know your mother, she added, and I know Meredith. And I also know that if someone like you, quiet, respectful, always putting up with more than you should, finally loses it, there's a reason. That caught me off guard. My throat tightened a little. She asked if I tried to talk some sense into you. Said maybe you'd listen to me. Are you here to do that? No, she said softly. I'm here to tell you I see you. And I'm proud of you. That was the first time anyone in my family had said that to me. And it shattered something I didn't know I'd been holding together with tape and false smiles. She told me she was sorry I'd had to deal with so much for so long. Bet sometimes, walking away is the brave thing. That maybe one day they'd understand, but that in the meantime, I should take care of myself and not feel guilty, because I'd done nothing wrong. After we hung up, I sat on the couch and looked around my apartment. It was small, messy in places, nothing fancy, but it was mine, every corner of it. I didn't owe it to anyone. I didn't earn it by playing some role to make other people comfortable. And for the first time in years, I realized I liked my life, even if no one in my family could see the value in it. That weekend, the wedding invitations went out. And that's when things got even messier. Because I wasn't just left off the invite list, they made sure everyone knew why. When the wedding invitations started circulating, I didn't expect to see one, and I didn't want one either. But I wasn't prepared for what actually showed up, because they did send me something. Not an invitation. A letter. Handwritten. On thick, cream-colored stationery with a golden MNR embossed at the top, like a royal decree. No envelope. Just folded and dropped unceremoniously into my mailbox, as if they couldn't even be bothered to seal it properly. It was from my mother. Adam, I hope by the time you read this, You've calmed down and realized how much pain you've caused. Meredith is devastated. Ryan's parents have pulled some of their contributions, and several vendors won't return our calls because of your little tantrum. I tried defending you. I really did. But I can only make so many excuses before people start wondering what's wrong with you. I'm asking you, one last time, to apologize. To make things right. Come to the wedding. Be gracious. Be a man. Prove to everyone that you're not as selfish and petty as you've made yourself out to be. It's not too late, unless you make it that way. This is your family, Adam. Don't throw it away over a joke. Mom. No apology. No reflection. Just that same twisting of the knife, wrapped in guilt and entitlement. I read it once, then again, slower the second time. Then I folded it neatly, slid it into a folder with my lease documents and car papers, my own silent archive of boundaries finally drawn, and poured myself a drink. That was the last straw. Not the insult, not the letter, but the expectation that I'd show up, smile, and perform the role they had written for me one last time. I didn't respond to the letter. Instead, I made plans. I knew the wedding venue. A vineyard estate 2 hours out, the kind of place you book for the scenery, not the people. I didn't want to crash it, didn't want a scene. I just wanted closure on my terms. The night before the wedding, I sent one message. Not to the group chat. Just to Meredith, in just one sentence. You're right. I won't be attending. She didn't reply, but I knew she read it. And the next morning, while they were busy with hair and makeup and morning mimosas, I was on the phone, this time with a lawyer. You see, what my family forgot, what they never bothered to ask about, was how all those wedding reservations had been paid in the first place. It wasn't just favors or kindness. It wasn't me helping out. It was a loan. A documented, signed agreement between Meredith and me, drawn up by an attorney friend of mine back when she first asked for help funding her dream wedding. Back when she still wore a fake sweet voice and called me her artsy little brother. The contract was simple. I'd front the initial cost for the car lease, vendor deposits, and event bookings, and she'd reimburse me within 90 days of the wedding. Failure to do so would trigger a clause requiring immediate repayment, with interest, plus reimbursement for damages, i.e., any losses I incurred from being on the hook with my name and credit. She signed it. She laughed as she signed it. You're so dramatic, Adam. Like I'd ever mess you over. And now she had. The lawyer filed the demand letter that morning. Certified mail. A copy to her. A copy to Ryan. A copy to my parents, since they'd been involved in some of the financial arrangements. I didn't expect them to pay up. I expected them to react. And boy, did they. That afternoon, while I was at my apartment sketching out a client design for a new mural project, my phone exploded again. This time, it was Dad. What is this legal stuff, Adam? Are you seriously suing your sister on her wedding day? I didn't respond. He followed it with another call. Then another. Then a voicemail so long it got cut off. You ungrateful little. You think this is how you make a point? You think this makes you look like a man? No wonder no one takes you seriously. You always had a chip on your shoulder. I stopped listening. Because for once, I didn't care. And I realized something even deeper. I had never been part of this family, not really. Not in the way they wanted. I wasn't the golden child. I wasn't the success story. I was the utility. The background player. The safety net. The ATM. The extra seat at the table to fill the photo. And now that I was gone, really gone, they were scrambling. Not because they missed me, but because they lost their free labor. I spent the day doing what I actually loved. Working. Drawing. Listening to music I liked. Eating food I made myself in silence, without criticism or fake smiles. That night, while they danced and posed for filtered photos under fairy lights, I sat on my fire escape with a glass of bourbon and watched the city glow. 2 weeks later, the real fallout began. Meredith and Ryan ignored the demand letter, pretended it didn't exist. So the lawyer filed the next step, a formal civil suit. When they were served, Mom called again. Not to yell this time, but to beg. Adam, please. Don't do this. It's embarrassing. People are talking. This will ruin her reputation. I took a breath, steady and calm. Did you think about my reputation when you laughed at that place card? She was quiet. Did you think about my life when you handed me a bill and called it a favor? Still silent. I'm not doing this out of spite, Mom. I'm doing this because I let all of you walk over me for years. And I finally stood up. Click. The case dragged for months. Meredith tried to play victim. Ryan made threats. Their attorney tried to settle quietly. But my lawyer was firm. We had every receipt. every contract, every message. And eventually, they caved. They paid. Every cent plus damages. And I used that money to open a small studio space downtown. A quiet room with tall windows and high ceilings where I could paint, design, and breathe. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't huge. But it was mine. The best part? I never heard from them again. Not for holidays. Not for birthdays. Not when Eric and his wife had their second baby. Not even when Dad retired and Mom posted about it on social media like it was a royal coronation. They cut me out. And for once, I wasn't sad about it. Because for the first time in my life, I felt free. Not angry. Not broken. Just free. I still have the place card. The failure. I keep it in a drawer at the studio. Not out of bitterness, but as a reminder that sometimes walking away isn't failure. It's survival. It's self-respect. It's the first step toward a life you don't need to justify to anyone, especially not the people who only called you family when it was convenient.